All right, guys. To let you guys know, I was have a little laughing crisis before we started, because this is a very special one more conversation that we're having here with I call her my irmãzinha. We share the same birthday. We have a lot in common. Besides my world champion massive brain that can't organize anything. All right, and I'm here, you guys, to talk with Melayne Shayne, the brain, the beauty, besides underneath Budokon. So, how are you doing, my love?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's very special for me to have this conversation because I think even now, before we started talking, we're like, well, there's lots of things we actually don't even know about each other because we came into each other's lives, I think now 7 years ago. Through Cameron, and then I was involved with you guys, but a lot of my past, I think you don't even know.
Yeah, because mostly, our relationship, my relationship with Budokon and you is always like we're doing something.
Yes.
We have met in 2000, and I don't even remember the years more. They go so fast. When I came to Miami, right? Of course, when Lovato and the whole connection with Budokon happened. I got to meet you, got to spend a week in Florida, and right away, like, whoa, I'm very connected. You're very serious, and I could see the difference in the relationship. Cameras all over. You're more like boom, straightforward, and then we found out we had the same birth date, and then I was like, well, that's meant to be. But less about me, more about you. We get there to where I started. So, Melayne Shayne. Where was Melayne Shayne before it was Shayne? What was the name of the
I
name?
was Melayne Weber, yes,
Weber.
Because my dad is German, and then another part that is really connecting the both of us is my Brazilian, so my mom is Brazilian. So until I met Cameron 10 years ago, I was Melayne Weber.
Weber.
Yes.
Okay, so where are you born? So your dad is German, your mom is from where?
So my mother is from Paraíba, in the
Paraíba.
eastern part of Brazil, but we actually, apparently, I've never done a genetic tracing, but my mom actually got more curious about it last year, and it seems like we go all the way more into the Amazon also, and we come from a tribe.
Oh wow, India.
Yeah, so a lot of people call me Pocahontas. Like a lot of the kids, they're always like, "Are you Mulan? Are you Pocahontas?" I'm like, "Yes, but don't tell anyone." So I have a connection to the Amazon that I always felt, and maybe this is even something that I felt drawn to you originally because I felt there's some past, even that we shared in some ways. But when I grew up and I was born in Germany, I spent most of my life in Germany, actually. I went to school, but when I was 10 years old, we actually moved to Brazil.
Moved back to Brazil.
But we lived in São Paulo, a little bit outside of São Paulo.
So your dad,
Yes.
you told me a little bit of the story. They barely spoke each other language, or just the
Yes.
language of love, and then I think
Yes.
that's where everything beautiful starts, like you told me a story about like, hey, you either marry her or leave. How was that?
So yes, my parents, when they met, because they did meet in Brazil,
In Paraíba?
in Paraíba, in
Okay.
Areia, which is like a super small town in the mountains.
What your dad was doing there?
Well, my dad went there with my grandfather, with his dad, because he was a professor.
Okay.
And he would teach in Brazil over the summer months. They would send him there. And my grandfather also liked Brazilian women.
Okay. Well, what's not to like about
They have
Brazilian
something
women?
in common. Exactly. So he was going to Brazil quite often, and he actually had bought land, a big fazenda in that area where my mother's family lived. And my mom at that time, she was 20, my dad was 19. She was working at the university.
So your mom is older than your dad?
She's
Like
a year older. Yeah, but she's older. She's a year older, exactly. So she was working at the
Well,
university.
in Brazilian age is like 15 years older.
Exactly, yes, yeah. So they met one day at like a little university party.
Oh, wow.
My dad was there for only 6 weeks because he wanted to, get to know Brazil and learn a little bit of Portuguese. And yeah, they hit it off. They fell in love. But the story you're mentioning is my Brazilian grandfather, because my dad was all infatuated and in love with my mom. And he was like, I want to take you to Germany. My mom at that point, I don't even think she knew where Germany was. But then my grandfather, Chico, he was like, well, no, gringo, you go home, and if you come back to Brazil to get her, you can take her, but you marry here.
Oh, wow.
So my dad went back home to Germany, and they were writing letters over 4 months, and then he came back, and they got married. Yeah.
In Brazil?
In Brazil, in Areia, and then he brought her to Germany.
So it was like, so the honeymoon was already the trip to Germany?
Pretty much, yes. I don't even know if they did an actual honeymoon or anything. I know that they now, because they always go to Brazil now, usually at the beginning of the year, and in March 15th is their wedding anniversary, and they had 45 years just now. And they went to Fernando de Noronha. Yes, they love.
So love is still there.
Oh God, my parents all the way. They're having their second spring.
Well,
I feel
if
like.
you say that Germans, are cold, that's a proof that they aren't. So they get married, beautiful love story, and then it's beautiful to know that's already in your DNA.
Yes.
So then you were born exactly where?
I was born in Berlin because my dad, when he married my mother, he brought her to Germany, to Berlin specifically, because he was doing a doctor's there. My dad is a doctor of engineering. So he was actually finishing university, and my mom came, she started learning German and started working, and my parents were already almost, I would say, 7 or 8 years into their relationship when they had me.
Okay,
yes.
so it basically gave them time to know each other, right?
Yeah, I think
like
so.
Integration time. I think
Yeah,
that's
my
important.
dad was still,
Working,
young
trying
and
to make
studying,
it happen.
figuring it out. So yes.
I wonder until she was able to say something in German with some love, right? Because even when I was start to learn English, everything is very formal until you actually put like some love and passion, intention underneath the language. So they get married. So do you remember anything like in Germany, like
Oh yeah.
like you first started school? How was there in Germany?
Yes, I have actually a lot of memories from my childhood, and because both of my parents were working at that time, I would actually spend a lot of time with my grandfather, the professor, and his wife at that time, and my uncle, who was only 6 years older than me. My uncle Thomas. He's basically like a big brother to me because we're 6 years only of difference. So he was a big influence for me because he was actually doing kickboxing. He loved Batman. He loved playing Nintendo. So I grew up in a very tomboyish environment with them, but at the same time, I was also very much influenced by my mother. She was like, okay, you gotta go to ballet, you need to play with Barbie. So I was living those two realities almost in some ways. But I went to kindergarten in Berlin. I spent a lot of time, yes, like I said, with my grandfather and my uncle. And then when I was 6 years old, my mom got pregnant again with my brother. And this is when I moved to a different part of Germany, in Bavaria. In Nuremberg. Yes.
So what age did you move to Bavaria?
So I was 6 years old when we moved there. So I started going to school in that specific area.
Bavaria is like Munich, Stuttgart,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So yeah, Munich is only about an hour and a half away from where my parents live in Nuremberg. So Nuremberg is a small town. Back then it was a small town. Now it's a little bit more famous for the Christmas market, and Hitler back in the days, he had a lot of dependance there. So that was my years, let's say, from first grade until fourth grade, because when I was 10, this is when we moved to Brazil.
Of course, there's always that question growing up, right? You're not a normal German, right? As we know in Brazil, which I actually, when I went to Germany for the first time, there's a slang in Brazil you call alemão. Anyone that's blonde and blue eyes.
Yes.
Right? It's not Russian. It's not it's like Polaco. Sometimes we say like Polish, but most is alemão. Aquele alemão ali, right? It's a slang. We call it German, right? And because we're both martial artists, and I was asked this because when we're a child, there's always something that turns into like a bullying or something. And of course, when you think about Germany, because the history, you know what I mean, the whole, you know, Hitler and stuff like this. Did you feel, because you're like basically like India, you know, from Brazil, that you were like different? Like did the girls look too different? Did you feel that you had to like really push it through to like, well, they don't talk to me because I'm darker, because I have dark hair, because I'm Brazilian? Did that influence you somehow within those ages?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question that no one ever really asked me, and I haven't thought of much, but I know that my years in Berlin, because Berlin is very multicultural.
Yeah, Berlin is more
So I
multicultural.
remember I had like Arabic friends and Turkish friends, and it was very diverse. But Bavaria, not so much. They are definitely a little bit more German in that sense. So I remember actually during that time that I did have a lot of challenges with the girls, especially, and some sort of bullying, but really more like stupid letters, you know, where we're sending anonymous letters
Well, that's
and saying, yeah, I mean it is, but
Not physical,
yes,
emotional.
but they did actually, and this is even something I feel like that has created for me a mistrust with women, and having a hard time building friendships with women, which then drew me as I got older to create what I'm doing now, where I bring women together to overcome all this story we have about each other and this competitive nature, and really come together to be very free of those ideas and connect as women, as sisters.
You brought a really good point right now, since you're saying that, like, because there's always these, which is a parenthesis word, you know, the storytelling, and of course it's part of your work. Do you think, like, we talk a lot about like the bullying and the machismo, like, you know, misogynies and things like this, and you're saying that is actually sparking something, because my daughter says that a lot. Do you think it's actually start among the women? Because now you're talking about women not trusting women.
Yeah.
Even before there is a male figure. Of course, I'm not talking about like parent, you know, like the whole trauma, whatever you take from parent,
sure.
that idea. But you think the social interaction among women when you're so young, it could almost be harder for women to interact in this way than men, because men's more physical. Of course, there's the emotional abuse, but men, usually we get way more concerned about the physical abuse of being beat up or something like this. But I think on the women world, it's very emotional, and because women are naturally more emotional, more caring, do you think this is something that, even thinking about this now, is almost like we can have a whole conversation on that.
For sure, let's go.
So do you think this is a reality? Like, do you think like we should really be looking at our, now I'm like even concerned about my daughter now. Do you think this is something that's being carried upon? And then by the time there's a male figure involved, it's already a mess? On the trust? As far as trust?
I mean, sure, I wouldn't say it's an absolute, but it's definitely something that I see a lot. And from my own experience, I can say that growing up, I think as girls, we already learn a lot about what is the perfect way to look, you know, what am I supposed to be wearing. I mean, even simple things as hair. Today I went to a hairdresser and we started a conversation about women always want hair that they don't have. Like, I feel there's a lot in our psyche that from a young age we already get really brainwashed almost to the point where we're like, well, I'm different, but the different is creating this disconnect between us, and this competitiveness, and me wanting something that you have and I don't have. Versus, I think what I feel like we should teach our girls is more like, well, each of us is unique, and that's the beauty of all of us, you know, having that uniqueness, and that makes you special. But thinking back, and even, talking to our daughter, there, and even social media, I think, made it even worse. There's so much fabricated, fictional standards of beauty and being that is creating a lot of tension between women. I do think so, and a lot of internal tension because I'm always coming from a place where I feel like I'm not enough. So this this wound that I think a lot of women carrying of not being enough is what they get to wrestle out on a very mean level with other women. I feel like men, like you said, they maybe that amped up energy and tension and frustration is expressed physically, but with the women, I think there's so much underlying passive aggressiveness and just, I mean, if I think about the letters, now when I'm really going back, I'm like, yeah, they were saying, feel like you're the worst piece of shit in the world and you deserve only this like stupid boy over there, no one will ever want you. I mean, that ingrains some beliefs in a young girl's mind at a very young age that I feel like is what we, as we grow older, carry with us, and that creates conflict in then the relationships we create with the men and the women in our life.
Oh wow, this is all right. This is maybe something we're gonna bring to the wolf pack, huh?
Yeah.
That's a good conversation to have there. All right, so that was a good little opening there. So now you're back to, I'll just say your roots, right? Half your roots. So went back to São Paulo. So what brought your family to São Paulo? So your grandfather is a professor. What a professor what?
He was a professor
Like a college?
for
University?
like university economics. He was teaching economics at that time. My dad is an engineer, so he was working at Siemens at that time.
Siemens.
So he was offered a job in Brazil because they knew he speaks Portuguese. So they brought the alemão to São Paulo, and he was basically an expat for 5 years when we were living there.
Okay. So how was now going from, let's say, middle school? Okay, 10 years old, what is that? Sexta série?
Quinta
Série. So you went like, we call ginásio, right?
Yes,
the first one,
exactly.
Ginásio. So I was coming from Germany, but did you spoke Portuguese at home? Like, how was your Portuguese? Like, you spoke Portuguese, but I would imagine that, you know, your grandfather being a professor, that he would, I'm just imagining, that he would be like, you need to know grammar in Portuguese. So you just spoke Portuguese. Did you know anything about the grammar in Portuguese? Because it's one of the hardest languages in the world.
I know. So, which it's also very interesting because I remember growing up, my mom would always talk Portuguese to me, and my dad German. And then when I was staying with my grandfather, he would speak German, but his wife was Brazilian too, so she would speak Portuguese to me.
Dad and son.
Yeah, they figured it out, you know. So the interesting part is that my brain at that time couldn't really understand why I should speak Portuguese because I was in Germany and everybody, like my friends, everybody speaks German. So I understood everything in Portuguese. My mom would say something in Portuguese, I would answer in German. So at some point they didn't even know if I can speak. I didn't learn to write or anything. But then when we got to Brazil and I went to school, I knew everything. Somehow I absorbed it and I was able to, you know, learn everything correctly and very fast and started speaking. Because I also remember when I was younger, we would go to Brazil probably every 2 or 3 years when I was a child.
Okay,
so same there. I would, you know, play around with my cousins and speak a little bit, but never like fully. But once I moved there, somehow my brain was like, okay, that's your language now. That's where we are.
Oh, very German.
Exactly.
Because I feel like the thing with
like
languages,
boxes.
right? Like my daughter, I feel like if I have to speak with today, I speak 2 languages fluently, and I can actually be emotional in both languages. I can express emotions in both languages, but I feel like with my daughter, for example, if I really want to express something emotionally to her, I have to speak English. You know what I mean? Like
English?
Yeah, because, you know, that's all, because I've been in America for 23 years,
it's a
you
long
know,
time,
and
that's
her Portuguese is very broken, like, even like her tone changes, right? I could speak English right now, e mudar para português and come back to English, I don't change my tone, but she changed her tone like she's someone else, because she's processing.
Yes.
Right, so because now, let's go to your like 10-year-old brain.
Yes.
You speak German.
Yes.
You listen to Portuguese. You probably know some English because everybody in Germany knows
Yes,
some
we
sort
learned.
of English.
Yes, we learned it very young.
And did you feel that because we spoke about emotions, do you think were you able to like communicate your emotions in Portuguese right away, or do you feel there was a little moment where like?
Yeah, that's a good question because I'm trying to even think about those years and how much emotion would come up for me.
Because you're in a new country, it
Yes,
gotta be hard,
yes,
right?
yes. So I think, because I'm really thinking even more like, okay, after those 5 years in Brazil, going back to Germany, I struggled more going back to Germany than the time I had in Brazil, because I think what happened, because obviously this is the time 10 to 15 where, you know, you
That's
as
the
a
time.
girl, you kind of
you're going to
transition.
that's the biggest integration between a girl and a
sure.
woman that you have in your life.
Exactly. You know, I had my first period. I had my first, you know, boyfriend. I really had my group of friends I felt very, you know, connected to. So I think that had an emotional layer to me and a shaping again of my psyche and who I felt like I was, and expressing, you know, that first love to someone.
Wow.
So
Brazilian
yeah, it
love,
was the first
yeah.
Brazilian love, exactly.
Yeah.
But then, yes, so I think even now when I go into an emotional space, the language that comes from me first is Portuguese.
Oh, wow.
Like sometimes German, but my first inclination would be Portuguese. This is even something where I feel like Cameron and I still, because our common shared language is English, sometimes I feel like I can't really say what I want to say.
wow.
But also because I find Portuguese or Spanish, they already carry an emotional note, and they have like a texture to it that English or German doesn't have to me.
Yeah, because I think like I think in language in English is very strict. Like if the
Yes.
word is here versus here is a
Yes.
question, here's versus here is an
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
In Portuguese is the way you say it.
Exactly.
So it carries a vibration and a
Yes,
frequency that
yes.
that you have to interpret that.
Yes.
Versus like, oh, okay, do you do. You know what I mean? It's a
Yes.
totally different story. And did you feel any difference between the girls in Germany? I know, of course, until 10 years old is one way. And then what do you feel was the biggest difference between the girls, and going back to the emotional little bullying, whatever, the connection between the women? What do you feel was the biggest difference? You know, because girls in Brazil, they're very touchy, you know, they're very more like,
Yes.
we all the man too, we're very like huggy, you know, and like, hey, bro, you know, it's very like, so what do you feel the biggest difference?
I would definitely say that aspect of just physical touch, and then also how inclusive the girls were actually in Brazil, and how inclusive it was between women or girls and boys at that time. Because I felt in Germany, at least until that age of 10, there was a lot of separation between the boys and the girls. And as soon as I got there to my school, and even the after school programs and everything was very mixed, and there was just a more natural exchange between girls and boys. And then the group of friends that I made was really this combination of, you know, some older boys and then us girls, and you know, starting to go out a little bit, and then they started having cars. So to me, I felt very welcomed right away, and there was way less of this underlying tension between us, because I guess maybe even to your point, I just felt like I belonged, you know, I looked like the other girls, you know, and that already created some cohesiveness within the group. So that I would say was my biggest pain also when I went back to Germany, because I really missed what felt so close and so trusting in those friendships, then going back and I felt like this alien again with everyone.
So then you go back to Germany, that would be like sophomore year, freshman year? How would that be?
15, gosh, yeah.
So you go like, baby, okay, let's just be elementary school in
Yes,
Germany,
yes.
middle school, Brazil, now back to whatever, high school.
Yeah, finishing
in
basically
Germany.
school in Germany.
At this point, what type of career, you know, because of course right now you're the Budokon queen and you do your whole work that we're going to talk about. what was going through your mind now? Like, you know, what was the mindset? What was the German mindset of
Yeah.
like, go to college, this is what you're gonna do, boom.
Yes.
What was that phase now, the transition between now I have to make a life choice?
Yeah, so I was very, I think, influenced by my dad. And obviously my grandfather were very academic in our families. And my dad, he basically finished his university degree and he worked for Adidas his entire life.
Oh,
Not
wow.
Adidas, for Siemens, I'm sorry. For Siemens for 40, 45 years.
Oh, wow.
So he has this mentality around, you know, you pick a place, you're loyal to them, you work your way up, you know, you take life serious and you know, stick to it. And I was always very good in school. I had good grades. So when I finished school, I had many choices because of my grades. However, what I already felt more inclined to in the last years of my school, because in Germany, the last 2 years of school, you basically get to pick a major and a minor already.
Oh.
So in which you finish your exam, like we call it Abitur. So I did it in sports and in Spanish, because for me, I felt very inclined to learn languages because it came easy to me.
No engineering, no nothing, like Spanish and sport.
Sports.
So you'd say you'd be like educação física,
Sim, educação
more
física.
like kinesiology and the language.
Correct, yes.
Wow.
So that was what I chose, because I mean, I was good in math and physics and chemistry, but it
Your
didn't
dad is
interest
like,
me.
Your dad's like, she's gonna be an engineer.
Yeah,
oh
I
my
mean,
God,
I think he was hoping.
she's gonna make a rocket to the moon.
Oh, yes,
What?
yes,
No, physical
no.
education, Spanish. What's going on? I thought it was Brazil.
I know. And he always tried in the summer months, he would actually have me work at Siemens, like for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, like a little internship program. So in his mind, I guess he was really priming me to eventually work there, but I didn't like it. I just knew that I wanted to always do something around movement. But I also was very interested, at that time at least, to still work in a corporate environment. I think this was something in my brain. Is like, okay, pick the safer route, you know, go to a company and, you know, work in a company and, you know, enjoy the benefits and make a career. So that's definitely something. When I finished my school degree and I chose my university degree, it was influencing that choice. I still picked something that was a little bit more exotic. It was called communication and cultural management in a private university.
Does this exist? But that's
I mean, they created it.
Communication?
Yes, and
And?
cultural management.
That's totally what I need. Because
I mean, yeah, it was great.
That's literally what we are today.
I agree.
Cultural management
Yeah.
is something. Wow, maybe we should go back to that.
Yeah.
That to college.
So
right
yeah,
there.
it was a very small university in the southern part of Germany. It was private. They were very young and they're very innovative. So I was like, this is where I want to go, because I don't want to just go to a regular university, which I appreciate. Studying in Germany is for free, and you have great education there. However, I felt like I could not exist in a classroom of like 500 students. I needed something more intimate, where I felt like I have personal relationships and the professor knows me and I can go and ask real questions. And that university that I found felt very interesting to me because of so many aspects that are in it. It was new, it was innovative, it was very international. They were very focused on practical experience, internships. So I was like, okay, that's the one. So I applied, and you had to go through like a whole
Socratic approach.
Yes, and you had to go through like a whole application process, almost like you were applying for a job already.
Oh, wow.
So there were interviews, and you had a whole 2-day experience with other students who applied for it to, you know, be chosen.
Oh, wow.
Basically. And then I did that. I got the position for the studentship offered, and I did that, and it was, I think, one piece in the puzzle to take me where I am today, because what I learned there, was diverse because you were very free in what to choose in terms of your classes. So the cultural classes you could pick from art to history to social psychology, and then the communication was marketing, PR. Then the management part was obviously, okay, everything regards to numbers and building a business. So it was very
Very
complete.
applicable. And
Yes.
very applicable to what you need to do. Like I feel that normal college is like this. I'm a lawyer, but I have no clue how to run a business.
Yeah,
because to
no.
be a lawyer, you gotta run a business.
Correct.
Basically,
correct.
right?
Yeah. So it definitely taught us a lot of skills. What I enjoyed a lot about it too was a lot of teamwork. They really encouraged a lot of those project-based, experiences. And then during that time, I decided to go and do a whole semester as an intern at Adidas. And that kind of then was the next step in my journey, because once I did my internship there for 6 months, I really wanted to work there. Like to me, that was trying it on, how it would feel like to work there, because to me, Adidas at the time really brought together my passion for sports, my interest in marketing, working with athletes, working with fashion, and it was just a perfect setting where I found myself in. So I was lucky enough that they offered me to write my bachelor thesis there, and then they took me on as a trainee, and then from a trainee I was offered a job, and then I stayed there for 6 years.
6 years. So you went from college. So that was it in the when you graduate college, it was like an internship, and then you graduated. So did you finish the
I finished my university degree, a bachelor of arts. I was 21 or 22 at that time, and then I went and started working.
All right, so now you're working in a environment,
Yeah.
Whatever, let's call it 9 to 5.
Oh no, it was like 8 to like midnight.
No, it's German style. You never not working.
Yes, exactly.
And by the way, welcome to our world. People say
Yes.
like in this transition of like the traditional work, working to what we do, and a lot of times like I'll be like, yeah, I teach jiu-jitsu, I do this,
Yes.
I'll be like, but yeah, but what's your job? I'm like,
Yes.
we do not have a 9 to 5. It's a 24/7,
Oh, it
36/5.
is.
Even in our rest day, our phones are ringing.
Correct.
Our Wi-Fi.
Brains are going.
Our Wi-Fi, it's going on there. So, with Budokon, right? Let's talk about Budokon a little bit and how you start to like integrate into those, right? So we have Budokon yoga, we have the mobility, we have calisthenics, we have martial arts, we have grappling, we have striking, we have personal development. So you're doing all of this, but what part does the sports, the actual physical part, what did you do? Did you play soccer? Did you play volleyball? How did the yoga got in? How did you get into all of this?
Yes. So sport was always part of my life. Like I was even watching a video. My dad sent that to me. I was like probably like 1 year old or 2 year old in diapers on a horse. So I grew up with horses. And my grandfather actually had a lot of horses on his farm. And I became a competitive horse rider. So I started riding very young, and then actually during the time in Brazil, those 5 years, I worked with one of the Olympic athletes and coaches, and I really had a future in that world. And in my mind, I know if we had stayed in Brazil, that's what I would be doing probably now. That would be my life, horses and competing, and that's it. And like I mentioned earlier, I started ballet also very young. So I was 3 years old until I was about 12, 13. And then I stopped when I started doing the point, and I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to focus on horses. So I never really grew up doing much team sports or balls. That was never really mine. I played a little bit of volleyball in school, but nothing
Physical
where
education,
yes,
whatever,
exactly.
More playful than actual
Yes,
sport.
yes, because volleyball and swimming was actually the core sport within that sports degree that I was doing. So that was it. But then when I finished school and I transitioned into university, this is actually when I started finding yoga and running. I'm always a passionate runner. I love running.
How was your first class? What was the first, because, for guys that don't know, probably, you guys hear a lot, Budokon yoga is it's its own, quality. Let's put it this way. And there's a lot of like, there's what people say yoga is, and then there's like all the families of yoga. What was your first experience? Like, okay, I'm gonna do this stretching thing. Like, let's put it this way. So, how was your first class? Was like Ashtanga? Was Hatha yoga? Was just like a stretching class?
Yeah, one of my colleagues at Adidas, because they offer like a company sports program that's subsidized, and they had yoga on the schedule, and she loved it. So she was like, "Come do yoga with me." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, I'll try." So I went to this class with her, and it was a vinyasa class. And I liked the movement, but first I was a little turned off by all the bells and whistles. It was a very traditional yoga studio, and I had never meditated in my life before. I had no connection to that, let's say, traditional spiritual practice that came with yoga at that time. So that was new to me, and I was even a little confused. I was like, I don't know if I like this, but I got really hooked, obsessed. Like I started going 2 or 3 times a day, morning, lunch, evening. I just started really loving how my body felt.
So how is like you go and your mind tells you what the fuck is this?
Yes.
To like, it's actually interesting, I think. Because you are an artist, right? The way you're talking about how you think outside the box and things like this. So I would say spiritual practice is a form of art. So when did you, so you leave the class, and you're like, that was crazy. Who's these people? But like, and you see yourself at home like, oh, I actually want to sit down and just meditate. How did that integrate in you? How did that work?
Yeah, I think what happened at that time, because my Adidas world was so crazy and high frequency, that what I felt there was so peaceful in a way. It was just calm, and the music was calm, and the lighting was calm, and how people interacted was calm. But then I liked also a little bit less intensity in the practice, because when I would run, I would like 1 hour, 1 hour and a half in my lunch break, and I just kept myself at that high frequency, and I didn't sleep much, like to the point that I basically had a burnout at the end of my Adidas career, which took me to where I am today. So the yoga aspect for me became something that felt very grounding and quiet, as a contradiction to all the high, intense output that I was living in 24/7. But then I took it to the edge. That's something that is part of my personality too. Once I get something, I get obsessed, and then I want more. So yeah.
So when we think about polarities, right? Like everybody talks about how yoga is peace, jiu-jitsu is like, so we in Budokon, we say, no, we're integrated, right?
Yes.
Like when I tell people even to like do movement in a class full of black belts, I say, hey guys, be more soft, bring your feminine side to the movement, right? The idea of like pliability and movement, right? So do you think this, how can I say, the formal world, or the how they call it, like the when you work in a company, there's a word
The corporate world.
The corporate. Do you think that brought a little bit of your masculine energy?
Oh yeah.
And then because now you're not in tune with your emotions anymore, you're not sleeping, you're doing all that crazy stuff. So do you think that grounding was you going back and like, well, like, I can be soft again. I can get in tune with my internal, love and emotion. Do you think that what really, I guess you were urging for that, right?
Yes, I definitely think that, and I still believe to this day, a burnout to me is my body really telling me to stop, versus my mind, who would always be racing.
So you think it was more physical, really?
It was a very visceral experience that I had through it, that my body, yes, was longing for something that I was working constantly against. And I think, yeah, that disconnection, which goes back to even what we were talking about earlier with, you know, what is the imprint you get as a girl, you know, and I think my experience with the girls back then, and then also my dad being very, you know, you have to be good, you have to perform, that this created a lot of internal pressure mentally for me that made me disassociate in many ways to, let's say, the more the softer and the more fluid and the more tranquil, serene part as a woman, and existing in a corporate environment like Adidas was, where we have a lot of young people and a lot of hungry people, and the like top down is really pushing you to
perform.
to perform and more output. And the division I was working in, we had like satellite offices around the world where someone in Tokyo writes you an email or wants a call in the middle of the night. So I was really buying into the game, and I felt really hyped up by it. But then my body progressively kept telling me, okay, you gotta stop, you gotta stop, you gotta stop, but I would override it. So I think the yoga then to me almost forced me to sit down and stop. Yeah, which was something I wasn't really used to. Yeah.
Okay, so then how did that transition going from like, okay, I found something that was almost like a remedy for you,
Yes.
right? Like a getaway to where we're going, and flow into what was the start? Okay, so what was the moment that you were like, oh, I like yoga, I'm deep into this, I say, you know what, maybe I like this better. But you still don't know what it is, right? There's always that moment like, I like this.
Yeah.
Same thing with jiu-jitsu with me. I say, I don't know where it's going. Like when I started jiu-jitsu, I was in front of Brazil and there's just trees. I'm like, all right, you need to go over there and you're gonna find a way through it, right?
Yeah.
So talk through the idea that maybe you got very involved with yoga, that got you to attend a teacher training,
Yes.
right? And then got you to start what the beautiful, you know, program with the Budokon.
Yeah, it was actually my yoga teacher at that time in Germany, because she saw me coming like 2-3 times a day. She's like, I think you should do a teacher training, you know, you should do something with this. And I was like, I don't know, I don't want to, I don't know, I don't
time.
Yeah, I don't have time, but I also
have a
didn't
schedule to
I never
follow.
I never saw myself as a teacher. That was never something that crossed my mind, you know. I was like, no, I'm doing my Adidas job, this is where I'm going. But she was like, no, come, you know, you should try. And I was like, okay, you know, for me, this is just another way to go deeper, you know, more practice, more learning. So I ended up doing this 200-hour vinyasa teacher training. And I started getting really comfortable with this idea of teaching, because we would practice teaching. And then after I finished, my teacher actually was like, well, do you want to teach at our yoga studio? And I was well, I mean, why not? So I started taking on classes. I started teaching classes at Adidas, and then that became another side hustle, basically. I started.
So now you have to do all the schedule with Japan,
Yes.
Korea, and Brazil,
Yes.
and now
Yeah.
you still found time to teach yoga.
Yep.
But what that point, which made your balanced, would have become an issue? Did that ever happen? Because there was one moment probably you have to let go of one.
Yes, and I think what happened then too is I started feeling like I was really enjoying the teaching, and I wanted to teach more, and I wanted to learn more. So I was like, I'm noticing that I'm possibly enjoying this more than what I had at Adidas.
Did you feel that maybe yoga was more like a self-development challenge versus challenge to a next goal or
Yes.
production? So maybe you felt that just selling more or creating something that's for the others wasn't fulfilling what you had inside.
You said it perfectly. What happened for me with Adidas is that every season is the same. You know, eventually you have it down, and you are selling something that to me at some point felt a little bit meaningless. And yes, I didn't feel fulfilled in that anymore, because with my yoga practice deepening, but also the questioning coming more, because I was never someone, like, I didn't grow up, like my dad is super intelligent, However, we were never very philosophical. This aspect was never really brought into my life early. So inquiring about self was not something that I had been in a regular practice. And then with the yoga, I even, God, I don't know, last year I looked at my old like diaries from that time. I was like, my God, I was really starting to ask myself big questions. And I think this then started creating more of, I want more meaning in my life versus just doing what I have been doing for so long. And I didn't really see myself in that setting, especially like you said, with the ego and the politics that just didn't bring me joy anymore. So that I think was the breaking point, where I then also did my Budokon teacher training, and that was the moment where I asked myself the real big questions, and I had a full meltdown. I even was, I remember where I was like, okay, I'm not living the life I'm supposed to, I'm not in the relationship I'm supposed to be, I'm not doing, fulfilling my purpose. So that created a big breakup with my old life.
Of course I went through that a little bit, and I think a lot of us go through that, right? Purpose versus money, and you put integrity in the middle, and then even with 6 blades, I go through that, you know what I mean? Am I building something that's gonna move away from what I love the most, right? So for the people that listen to us, you know what I mean? Because you have to have a lot of courage to maybe look at your banking account, like shit, I'm gonna go from 5 zeros to 2 zeros, or maybe to no zeros where now my zeros are gone. You know what I mean? Because it takes a lot of courage. So for someone that listen to us, what does it take for you to go for something that you'll be doing, and you basically got ingrained in that for like 7 years? How long do you work for Adidas?
Yeah, almost 7 years.
It's like a whole cycle of your life, right?
Oh, for
if
sure.
you look at the whole idea of 7-year cycles,
yeah.
now you have to let that go.
Yeah.
All right. What was it a process? Was it a voice? What was that inside of Melayne's head that said, you know what, I might not know what's in there, but I'm going there?
I think, I would say that was the very first time in my life where I had this intuitive hit and I trusted it. Like I was really starting to listen to this inner voice of mine that is not maybe my dad or any other expectations, where I was like, what am I feeling really drawn to right now? And it was so clear that I was like, okay, I'm going. I'm trusting that it will turn out the way it's supposed to. And I was willing to take on everything that came with it, because back then I would maybe think, oh, I'm losing friendships, or my family honestly thought I was crazy at that time. Well, but I was willing to go, and I was like, no, this is what I'm here to do and be and create, and just the trust in that, in myself. Because I think oftentimes what happens too, and a lot of women I think go through that, we just outsource our trust to other people, other voices, other opinions. And that was the moment where I was like, no, I'm grounded in me, I'm anchored, and I'm going no matter what. Even if that would have not worked out, I'd still feel like that was the best decision and necessary decision I needed to make in that moment.
But of course, you had a plan.
Did
you have a plan?
I had an idea. I had actually.
But because you were in a way, you were already teaching, so you were a teacher. They trusted you, and you were a teacher at Adidas, probably not anymore. But you did have a plan, right? So courage without a plan is suicidal. But
I agree. Yes.
But did you have a plan? But now it's like, let's say now you're in touch with your intuition, your gut, which you probably have always eaten very well, so your gut is fine, right? So you can listen to that without any bag food, right? Food that comes from a bag.
Yeah.
So did you have a plan? So I guess my question is more educative for a lot of women that sometimes feel like, well, let's go the $1,000,000 question. Do I need a man to do this? Or do I need something? You know what I mean? So there's still some sort of planning, right? It's not just like, all right, I'm gonna quit my job and do yoga and be.
Yes.
No, there is a structure on there. And you seem to be very, which I know you're very you're very planful, right? So was there a moment, like, was the moment that went to like, okay, intuition, okay, at least I have a vision board?
And I did, which is actually funny that you're mentioning that, because I even mentioned that to Cameron the other day, because we were talking about manifestation. And I think this is really, I would say, is my invitation. It's manifesting versus planning, even though you can see they are similar. When I did my yoga teacher training, my first one, and we created a vision board, I wrote down in that vision board, one day I see myself owning land, running trainings, retreats, working with people, building community. Movement is a big aspect, food, healthy living, sustainable living, and here I am, you know? So part of that, I think, is, and this is what I would say, well, listen first to what you really desire. Put it on a vision board or write it down, which to me is the first step in taking action and creating steps towards it. So me having that vision for myself, I think I was able to see things. You know, when Cameron and I met, I saw the potential and I saw an opportunity and I saw possibility. And then I would say the courage was me then willing to make this leap without, let's say, knowing completely what is going to be. But the trust was, I can create what I want to create. So I think this is where all these little components kind of work together. Yeah.
So when you found out about the Budokon, right? Because one of the biggest goals of me is get to people to know our work.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a huge work, you know. And right now we just sat on the standard of who is Melayne Shayne, where it all came from, you know. So, and a lot of people like, what is Budokon, right?
Yeah.
They have no clue what that is, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you know, I spoke with Cameron. He's the one that actually created it, and then now you guys are, of course, we are co-created with him. So when you look at that, you know, because, you know, there's many aspects of Budokon, right? So when you first learn of it, because, which I probably know from you, like, okay, what is this? You're probably like, I don't know if that Google at that time. So what was your first impression? Because now someone's gonna come out here, now I wanna look into Budokon. So what was your first impression of the work?
Yes. So the way I was introduced to Budokon was actually to one of Cameron's teachers back then. She was teaching at my yoga studio in Nuremberg at that time. And she saw me move in the yoga class, and she's like, she moves a little different, you know? There's something about her movement that is not as traditional yoga. Yes. So she's like, hey, I'm teaching this Budokon workshop next weekend. You should come. You might enjoy it. I'm like, okay, cool, no idea what it is. I didn't even look it up. So I go and take her class, and I was like, ooh, I like this.
What was it? Was it already the yoga part or just mobility?
she was teaching like little parts of the yoga sequence at that time. She showed us a few of the crawling patterns. I was like, wow, this is really different, and my body is really enjoying this way of moving. And then she was like, well, hey, it so happens that, you know, Cameron is coming back to Germany, to Frankfurt in a few months. You should do the teacher training. Like, it was always someone kind of saying, hey, you should do, you should try. So I was like, you know what, I have time, I have the money, I like this. And I signed up, and honestly, Shanji, I didn't even look up who Cameron Shayne was. I didn't look at anything. I just showed up for the training.
Okay, but at the time, you were still with Adidas.
I was, yes.
Okay, so you haven't really made that leap yet.
No, the leap really just happened after we met and after I did the training.
Okay,
Yes.
so tell me how was it? Because we're talking about our passive. I was even mentioning Cameron how we both could be very passive aggressive, but it's from a place of like, we want you to do well, right?
Yes.
I get very frustrated when I feel people with a lot of potential, like they're still kind of growing on that. So how was your experience? And of course we can talk about you know, fall in love and get interested on that, but let's just cut the work for now. You know what I mean? What do you like most about the Budokon work?
So when I got to the training, back then it was 3 days of training camp. What I really enjoyed is right away, and like I said, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Cameron showed up and he was wearing his belt, and I was like, oh my God, what are we doing here? Because I had also no real relationship with martial arts. So he's like, okay, everybody, we're sitting down, we're meditating. I was like, okay, cool. Okay. I like the discipline. So for me, that even reminded me a lot of my earlier years in ballet, because I had a Russian teacher. She would walk around with a stick. She was really hard on
ballet,
us.
Yeah, Russian
oh my
ballet,
God.
Yeah, you don't want to
she
mess with
she
that.
was tough. So I was like, okay, I like this. I liked immediately the challenge and the discipline of it. That spoke to me. So yeah, to this day, this is really the Budokon philosophy. When you come to a Budokon training camp, you're doing Budokon mixed movement arts. You're not just doing Budokon yoga. So Cameron then introduced us to like first ideas of grappling, and
So the original teacher training was a little bit of everything, because now you guys do
Yes.
very separate, right? You kind of like separate the disciplines a little bit.
Well, yes and no. We separated, I would say, within a day, we give each some time. So even now when you come and study with us in Montana, the mornings, conditioning, so strength, cardio,
you still train
martial
everything
arts.
because, for example, you can get more into it. Just to open a parenthesis here, as is more my curiosity at this point now, because there's like, okay, this week is 50 hours, yoga, Budokon yoga, but I know there's still mobility going on in other
Correct,
times, right?
correct,
So
correct.
even though you may sign up for a Budokon 50-hour yoga to do your yoga part
Yes.
of Budokon, you
Yes.
still work in everything else.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
So you let's say you're focused on a curriculum to learn to teach it, which was for me at the time the yoga. So I learned the primary series, Budokon yoga, and then around it we had, let's say, the experience of learning
Okay.
for ourselves.
So your first Budokon teacher training was specifically for yoga?
Yes, it
Okay,
was yoga.
so yoga, but then you were like, okay, but this is Budokon.
Correct. I then started understanding, okay, why is Budokon yoga even the way it is? Because, the roots are in martial arts. So then everything started just clicking for me more. I was like, okay, I get it now. And obviously the big component also throughout that weekend was mind science, which then was again something that brought up those big, massive questions for me. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life?
Oh,
and
goodness.
yes, pretty much. I went home and I cried for 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Because a little side story, at that time, yes, I was working at Adidas, and I was also in a relationship, in a 4-year relationship with someone I actually met at Adidas, and we were engaged.
Oh, wow.
We were 3 months away from getting married. So that obviously came up as another big question for me, where I was like, okay, is this even the man and the relationship I see myself in for my future life? And it all hit me, and I was like, no, this is not the job, this is not the man, this is not the life. And
Wow.
yeah,
So talk about courage.
yeah.
Talk about courage.
And where you're like, okay, I'm changing everything, not just one piece, but I was like, everything. Yeah.
Huh. So then, all right, we cannot talk about that transition between, you make a decision not just to, do Budokon, but
Yeah.
you guys, a powerful couple. How did that happen? Like, did you guys talk and then you go back home? Like, of course, you don't have to go into the details. You can fast forward to like where Budokon, regardless your relationship, became what you felt that's what you wanted to do. Because of course I don't want to come here and always, because it's not what it is. Because if of course the camera would go away, you still would be doing your craft, right?
100%.
So how did that pan out? How did the Budokon, of course there's that conversation with that relationship and all that. So how did you like? Because it could be very difficult, right? Okay, I'm falling in love for this man. Now I made all these life choices, but then your monkey brain is like, okay, but what can I do with this? How can I add to it? Because I think today you're a huge component, and you have grown so much, and we have done so much together. And you do the Wolf Woman and all the integration between you women and everything. So how did you feel now going through that transition between cleaning the clutter in your life
Yeah.
and invested in something that you feel had a future for you and took us where we're now?
I mean, the very first step after the training, and disregarding even me and Cameron, because that was really on hold for a long time, I finished the training, I got certified, and I started teaching Budokon. I said to myself, this is what I want to teach now. This is the only way, let's say, I want to practice for myself and I want to teach. So I then started teaching Budokon where I was living back then. And it gave me a really new fire. Like my classes got busier, and I think I kind of found my own voice, and I found myself within Budokon. And this is even something I say to our students, like, don't try to copy me or Cameron. Use this as a tool and find yourself, and through you get to share Budokon. So I think for me that was a very natural process at that time. I was like, okay, I feel very empowered in it, and it's something I want to pass along to people because it has created so much for me. So to your point, like, you know, I would teach Budokon today, and I'll teach Budokon for the rest of my life, no matter what happens. And then once Cameron and our relationship became closer again, to me that was a real moment, and even a moment between us when we were kind of like dating and playing with the ideas, like, okay, what is this? Do we want to be lovers and just have fun with it, or do we see a future for us? And I knew at that time, and I'm not wearing it right now, but our wedding band is a skull with the Budokon tomoe in it. I was like, well, if I marry this man, I'm marrying Budokon. So I made that decision at that time, that I was like, okay, I'm becoming part of this, and I'm making it mine as it is his. And the first years were really a lot about learning. I was shadowing him, I was his assistant, I was just taking in as much as I could. And the first years of our relationship, because we've been together now for 10 years, I would say the 4 first years was a lot about yoga. And we were really heavily existing in a yoga setting of yoga festivals and yoga teacher training and yoga conferences. So I got really good at that and confident in that. And then we started playing with the mobility work together a lot. So him and I together kind of sparked that in him again, to play a little bit more with this curriculum and make it something that we can share. And this is then also the time when we opened our first academy in Miami. And this is when I really officially started my martial arts journey. Because before that, the first years was just like little weekends here and there, but nothing really committed. But once we opened the school and we had a jiu-jitsu program, I started my
which now is my question, because you're talking about how, you know, it was primarily yoga, which funny because you say that, because I remember when we were talking about Brazil, I say it's much easier for us to get the yoga first and then get people involved in it. So I don't remember if I asked Cameron that, but how much actually grappling did you guys do? Did what you guys were exposed on that first teacher training? Was that a lot? Was it a little?
Me? My first teacher training? A little. It was maybe just like 1 hour.
How did he call it? Did he call it jiu-jitsu?
I'm trying to even remember. I don't think he called it jiu-jitsu. I think he just said
rolling
like
on the ground?
grappling or something. Yes,
So-
and it was no gi obviously at the time, and I mean it was bizarre. I even have like a funny story about it, because I had never grappled in my life. I mean, my dad, he would always wrestle with us in bed, like play. So my brother and I would do that with him, but I never had really, let's say, that physical contact. But then I was rolling with Cameron. I don't even know if you want to post this or take it out, but we were rolling, and I felt so excited about it that I bit his neck.
That can definitely sting me.
Because I don't know, it just triggered something in me, and I just bit his neck, and I was like, I don't even know what happened right now.
But the thing is, like I was telling Cameron, like a lot of, which one of the things for me, which I feel very comfortable, because we get to get a lot of women on the mats.
Yes.
You know, we create a safe space for them.
Yeah.
And I remember even the first teacher training that I witnessed with you guys, a lot of the yoga girls are like, "Oh, don't touch me. This is too much,"
Yes,
you know.
yes.
And then what's funny, the year after we came back, and the girls would not stop grappling, you know,
Yes.
which was beautiful. And that's normal because now you under pressure and you don't know what to do. Like I've had people, like women, that I was doing grappling with them because I say, hey, you cannot punch, you
Yes.
cannot, you know, twist my finger.
Yes.
And I'm doing something with this girl, and she pinched me. You know what I mean? Whoa! She's like, well, at least she pinched me in the place that you
Yes.
know. And I'm like, no, you can't pinch. I said, well, you say you can't punch and you can't twist the finger. You know,
Exactly.
you never said anything about
You didn't
pinching.
say you can bite or pinch.
You know, and I think it's natural. You
I
know what I
agree.
mean? Like if you look at, for example, I do that. You know, we usually men don't bite, but they put an elbow in your face,
Yes.
like almost like shove you off. So
Yeah.
that's a tolerable, acceptable reaction from you,
Yeah.
because like you know maybe. You know, because Cameron Houdini, right? He can be, you know, depends in jiu-jitsu, right? It's very gentle to a certain extent, but he could like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm gonna bite you, or I'm gonna like tickle you or something. So for your defense, I think that was very acceptable.
Thank you.
You know, so never when you came back home, no jiu-jitsu. Like, have you ever like walk around your city and like, oh, jiu-jitsu or BJJ or luta libre? I think in Germany, when I first went to Germany in 2006, jiu-jitsu was very little, but luta libre, which we call today no-gi,
Yes.
was huge.
Yeah, honestly, I had no awareness around it.
What about
It was nothing.
What about the striking part, like kickboxing? That
Well,
didn't
I
spark
knew my uncle was doing that, and he was even competing in that. But somehow my brain never was like, oh, I should do this, because I think it was also never encouraged through my parents or anything. So it was not something I saw myself do. I did a little bit of capoeira when I was younger in Brazil, because it was just a thing that was offered. But only really when we opened our academy and it became basically mandatory to join the jiu-jitsu program, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. But then my first 2 years were very intense. Like we would train twice a day, basically what we're doing here now. And I found a lot of love for it, to the point where I did very little yoga. And all my focus went into martial arts, the striking and the jiu-jitsu at that time. Yeah.
Okay, how was your first official class? Okay, better off. The $1 million question. How was your first gi class?
My first gi class, I will be honest, I was not really enjoying it, because for me, I like to move and I like to be in control. So I felt completely out of control. And I still feel this way oftentimes now, because I don't practice much gi, and it makes me really, that's when I feel my aggression and my frustration grow, because I don't want someone to control my choices. So that's even what I would say for me has really been a great gift of jiu-jitsu, is learning so much about myself, you know, what I like, what I don't like, why I don't like it, what comes up for me, what's part of my personality, what are beliefs. And this even what I pass now along to a lot of our girls, where I'm like, well, this is a mirror for you to look at yourself and deal with it in the moment.
Well, I'm glad she never beat me, you know, so that's good.
And I bet your ear off.
You know, like it's funny because nowadays I hear a lot of stories, and Cameron did say that. I'm gonna pull a little bit. So the first time we met was when I came to Lovato's little week camp.
Yes. I wasn't even there. I was actually in Mallorca, I think, at that time when you guys were doing that.
So I didn't meet you that time?
No, not that time. We had a
Really?
FaceTime call where I met you boys. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Oh, that's interesting. I don't remember that. That was a good week, and I remember
Yeah,
just
I know, you
learning
guys
the
had a great
first
time.
spirals and stuff. And of course, I even mentioned the camera. At least the thing is like, and I'm of course gonna say that like Melayne and I, we never got hurt. Cameron and I, he always elbows or actually he always headbutts my shin for some reason. You know, I don't know what that is. And just a little story. You know, I remember because, you know, Melayne, you know, they train very intense and things like this. And I remember the first tournament she competed at was the Worlds, right? And I was coaching her. I was about to coach her. And I'm imagining like the ferocious Melayne. And I'm like, who's that woman? you know, she's talking about being in control. Yeah, she was in control of everything. I was like, wow, that's impressive. You know, I was like, she's like, okay, I'm just gonna move this grip out of the way. Super calm, super serene, a little samurai. I was so proud. So I'm curious. So because I don't remember now, because I have this terrible thing. It's not I don't remember when I met people. I know people, like if I see a picture, I know people from
Yes.
like 20 years old. So what was the first impression?
First impression of you?
Yeah.
Because I'm even also myself trying to remember when was the first day we really met, but I think it was that second time you came to Miami and you actually joined us for the teacher training. And I know that I had mixed feelings about you, I remember, because I was like, in one sense, I was like, oh my God, is this like jiu-jitsu god, emperor, right, of just, you know, world champion, and we get, you know, the pleasure and honor to have you with us. And at the same time, I was like, oh, but he's, you know, he almost felt like, you felt like my family right away. There was something about that. So you also have something very stoic about yourself, where at the beginning, I don't even know, can I talk to you? Am I allowed to talk to you? And I think sometimes when it comes to mainly our, let's say, martial arts relationships, I feel like I want to give Cameron all the time he can have with you guys, and I know how much he treasures that relationship, that I'm kind of around, you know, when it's time I come in. But yes, I think it was over the course of time where we all just grew closer and closer together between the three of us. And but yeah, I always felt a warmth about you. And at the same time, I was like, oh my God, he's not interested in me. Like, my jiu-jitsu sucks. So who am I even to want to ask him a question? Which is still something I go through myself, where I get stuck in my own ways.
Even though we team up against Cameron a lot.
We do.
And then we found out we have our same birthday, January 20th. And then I don't remember, there was a conversation, and then I think it was a FaceTime or something. That was when I found out we're the same birthday. And Cameron, oh my God, I have 2 Melaynes in my life. I was like, yeah, but one that can smash the heck out of you and you can't bite back.
Yes.
You know, so let's talk a little about like the Budokon work.
Yes.
You know, so I think like now what I see now is way more like event based. You know, you guys do a lot of events and you do way more, because I remember back, I don't remember if you guys ever have done that, man. You know, you have the wolf pack and those things. So because I met you guys in Miami, and then you know we started a relationship there, and then pandemic hits and you guys are in Montana. Tell us a little bit about your experience with that transition.
It was a shock, honestly, for me, in different ways. I mean, in a good way, and it also made me learn a little bit about myself. So once COVID hit and we had to close our school in Miami, it was very sudden. We were in teacher training at that time, and then all of a sudden, like, you start reading the news, and then we were like, oh my God, they're going to close Publix and there's no more food. And it was really...
Yeah, and one thing interesting to know, Budokon is huge in Europe. You know, like I remember the first teacher training I went there, there are like 7, 8 different people from different countries.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm probably imagining there's a bunch of people all over the world.
Oh my God, yes.
In Miami, like, can we fly home?
Yes, that started becoming the main thing. Can we fly home? When do we have to fly home? What are we going to eat? Will there be toilet paper? It was like a whole thing that started happening and unfolding within a few days. And then, yeah, a lot of people just had to make decisions. Are we going to stay? Are we going to go? And then once that all got figured out, we had to face, obviously, having to close our school, which then forced me and Cameron to just go back and to look at, okay, what's our vision? What do we want to do? What has been something that we've been wanting to create? And one component definitely was something that I had been pushing for at that time already for probably 2 years. I was like, we got to go online. We have to create content online. We have to have teacher training online. And then the second was, well, maybe this is now the call to go and really find this piece of land where we can have more of a retreat center and training facility versus the brick and mortar day-to-day academy business. So once the doors closed, we started shooting straight, 6 weeks straight, every day, shooting, building a website, building a whole program, and creating Budokon Online, basically, during that time frame, and looking for places. And we started looking in different areas. We looked a little bit in Asheville, because Cameron was pushing for mountains, and he really felt this urge in him to be in a place where he can feel the seasons again. He went, I want spring, summer, winter, and fall. And I was like, I like Miami, but you know, I was like, okay, I will trust that. And if we wanted to find something that is big enough and in nature, which was really important to me, it looked like having to go more into those areas. And then a lot of people had mentioned whitefish to us during that time, and he really felt like he wanted to snowboard again, and I was like, okay. And then boom, we go online and we find our land, and it had 2 houses on it and the barn, and it was really just, you know, secluded and immersed with like trees and nature, and you could see the mountains, and it looked beautiful, like out of like, yeah, guys, it's majestic.
Champ Camp in August.
Oh yeah,
remember that? Or all the camps that we offer there.
Yes. And you know, for the summer months and what we do and create in the summers, it's perfect. It's the best place we could have found. You know, the second house became the student dorm, the barn became the dojo. We bought those canvas glamping tents, and we've built a village. So all that we always envisioned, and even my vision board again, came really to fruition in that place. And people come and they stay up to 4 weeks, and our team sometimes stays 3 months, and it really becomes the place of
3 months is an understatement. There's the people, they go there for a month, they stay for 5 years.
That's true. They never leave.
Yeah.
That's true, because I think what people really feel and long for in our daily lives is community, it's this tribe, and it's this aligned purpose and shared values, and doing what you love almost for 24/7. And when people have that experience, I mean, it obviously releases all the good hormones and chemicals, and you feel so connected and bonded, and you feel great in your body because you're training and moving and eating healthy. So that was the transition out there, which this is the beautiful part. And then my personal struggle is just the winter. This is when my Brazilian comes out and my little soul dies, because it's just so cold and dark.
Well, and also the snow is that tall.
Yes.
So we talk about everything you went through, right? And you talk about your vision board. Can you describe a moment, you know, which of course I've been in Big Sky, Montana many times, and that you could be looking at those pine trees, or whatever, I don't even know what a pine tree called, but you can look at those
evergreens and
and there's not even like so many stars. Like just almost like like you know, they throw like sand, like they threw sand on the sky, and that's the sky.
Yeah.
Can you describe just like the moment when you sat down and maybe you look at the glamp houses and then you're like, fuck yeah.
I mean, I have those moments in the summer. You know, for me, it's always when I'm in it. Yes, when I'm in it, I'm in it. You know, sometimes in the winters I can forget, but then when the summer comes, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why. Because, yeah, like you said, I don't think I've ever experienced any other place where you feel like you're so close to the stars, like you're in the universe. And I mean, we have beautiful journeys on our deck where you feel like the trees are the guardians, and you feel so held by nature, and the quality of the air, the water. We have our own well, and no noise pollution, no light pollution. It really brings you back to the simple life, and then you're just with people that you love and feel so connected with. So then I'm like, yeah, this is it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The whole summer, you know, they travel the whole world. Like, if you talk to me traveling, those guys are always on the road. She was even saying the other day, like, she learned how to pack light.
Yes.
And I'm like, and I'm looking at my bag. I'm like, and I look at Melayne's bag. I'm like, all right, she's, you know, she's super small size, but even that, I was like, that's so many unnecessary things. You know, so the whole summer, you know, there's every week there's the Guru Killer, which is the broad spectrum that people stay. Well, like as far as officially, like
Yes.
let's say you sign up,
Yes.
what's the longest you can stay? Is a month?
Correct. It's basically 4 weeks. That's the Guru Killer Camp, because each week has a different module out of our
Yeah,
Budokon
that's what I mean.
matrix. Exactly. So week 1 is yoga, week 2 is mobility, week 3 is yobility, and then the last week is combat conditioning. So 4 weeks total.
And then when it's my camp, she goes to the kitchen.
No, not anymore.
anymore?
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
I used
Thank
to.
God, thank
exactly.
God.
I used
You know?
to, and then I was like, no more of
I
that.
was like,
so
when is that gonna happen?
I know. Yes.
You know, and then of course we have the jiu-jitsu, and that was very beautiful. I remember when we were trying to develop something, and then I told those guys like, hey, it can't be from jiu-jitsu to mobility. You guys have to embrace jiu-jitsu, and you know, for a while I think you were a little more invested even in the camera, you know, because you know, so how did jiu-jitsu? Because you know, of course, I may just draw a storyline or maybe make up one. How that idea of jiu-jitsu, which now you're not biting people, you actually feel connected to them. Now you embrace maybe what I feel, the sense of community.
Yeah.
And now you having these ideas of like, okay, that's the combat mobility now. Now we bring these worlds together, men, women, and stuff. And you have a beautiful work with the woman wolf pack, right? How did that all started? Like this idea, because I see, you know, you teaching self-defense, you know, which I think is very important to teach awareness. You know, of course, the real self-defense, I have to break to you, is to be on the mat training. You know, so I think like a lot of self-defense courses, you bring awareness to what can happen or not happen, but training is always going to be, you know, what makes a difference. So
Yes.
how did that, so talk a little bit about your work now. You know what I mean? How that transition between being a badass jiu-jitsu purple belt into now, you know, camps with like Christopher, and then your girls go to Mallorca. There's a girls only camp. I keep looking, your girls, you know, do a lot of like, I don't even know how to call this, like let you explain this. There's a lot of like, you know, holding and embracing one another. Can you tell, you know, our listeners, you know, they're maybe interested, and maybe with our conversation, which we agreed that we came up, like we're as young females, we suffer bullying among ourselves.
Yes.
And that distancing that trust, and sometimes we feel feel that distance, saying like, oh, it's a man, or it's the work, but no, sometimes it's within ourselves. So tell us a little bit where is Melayne right now? What's your passion right now with this work?
Yeah. So the work with the women just, I would say, started evolving for me really in the last 6 years, because I, within those last 10 years in this new role I'm finding myself in, as a teacher, and in the relationship with Cameron, and who I have become, let's say maybe more in the public eye, it has brought a new challenge for me with women, because I think oftentimes people come to us with this idea that we are saviors, you know, or they come to us and they see us as almost something superhuman, because this is the impression they get. And I think for what can happen and what I've experienced is that it can trigger something in certain women, men too, but since we're talking mainly about women in my relationship, that, you know, they start feeling frustrated, or they want something from me that I can give them, you know, because they have to do their own work. Or if I start showing up as the teacher and pointing out things, then they're like, oh, they get frustrated, and they're like, oh, why are you talking to me like that? I'm like, well, this is our agreement, right? I mean, you're here to grow, and I'm here to show up for you. And I think this has then created this new challenge for me to even find my own space between Cameron and myself as the teachers. Who am I within the context of Budokon? And if people knew Budokon prior to me, where I kind of had to like fight my way into it, and learn to even show up as, I don't like to call myself necessarily a leader, but more a guide. I think as a woman we have more of a guiding quality, and then the men show up as the leader. And this, as I said, has created some conflicts over the last year, even triggering me to the point where I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore, because I feel like people just want something from me and I can't build real relationships. So then I was like, okay, with this, how can I create a space where we as women come together and practice really being in close relationship to other women and coming back to, and this is why I called it the Wolf Pact, something that is very instinctual. It's basically existent in us prior to all the conditioning and the experiences we have in life that shape belief and come to one little container and setting. I love places that are in the wilderness, because I feel like already when you are in nature, it triggers something different in you. And then bringing these women, usually small groups. I like 15, not too big, so I can really have these intimate relationships and they can really bond. And to me, what is, I think, the difference to maybe, because there's obviously so much work with women done now and women's retreats and women's circles, I think what is bringing a different component is my own experience with martial arts and bringing that, what I learned, into that space. And I think it grounds us again into a realness that if you're just leaning again too much into the feminine or the hoo-ha and the esoteric, I like to bring it back to like, what is real? What are you really struggling with in your relationships, in your relationship to yourself? Like, let's talk about that. So the space we create there is a lot actually about conversing, bringing things up and looking at ourselves and becoming your own hero in that sense. Back to this idea of me saving them, it's more like, okay, be your own hero, right? Do your own work. And the women also feeling strong again in their bodies through the movement practice. But then at the same time also, because a lot of women come and they may be too much in the masculine, and then bringing them back into what you were even mentioning, a lot physical touch. This is something that I have realized men and women, we are lacking, just the physical connection to other people. Obviously jiu-jitsu brings one layer of that, but then a more nurturing touch. This is why over these last years I have brought a lot of women who offer Thai massage, and then we do a Thai massage workshop and the girls get to work on each other. And last time I had Shibari as part of the experience, because I think that brings a new layer of, again, getting to know yourself. And then yes, the self-defense to me is always just an introduction with my mission and really being, now go home and go sign up at a jiu-jitsu school. Yes, and a lot of those women do.
Yeah, and also like I think your work is super important, because even though we don't want to separate men and women, right? There's a big personal development within the Budokon curriculum, right?
100%.
Like the mind size. I think there's mind side, but there's a name for that. I just forgot. MPC, mind performance curriculum.
Yes, we're changing the name now. Exactly.
Yeah, just called, maybe, I don't know. I'm not here to create an issue, but because I think it's important to like also like the idea of relating, right? Like we as men, we can only go so far into a woman's world.
Oh, for sure.
And women can only go so far. Well, maybe not women, because women are way more intuitive. They're way more powerful than us, right? We're like an old analog antenna. Women have been in the digital world since the beginning of times. So I think that's such important work, because maybe if you have Cameron, let's just say in the old ways, talking about personal development to a woman, he may not relate, because and then we go back to our talking about the relation between woman to herself, and then of course I'm saying man to man as well. I could go on and on with that man to man idea too, and then women to women as in a social environment, women to women as mean girls. Now I grow as a woman, now I go to puberty, now I love a man, now a man comes in, and then there's this whole, it's too many layers, right? So I think that's why it's super important when I started to see your work, that I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive because I can see the girls relating better to each other.
Yes.
You know, and I think like, of course, there's always conflict, and I see there's less drama, you know, when we go there, but it's always going to be because, you know, we're not, you know, we're humans, right? We're not aliens just yet. So how do you see, you know, how do you see this going? What you talk about a vision board, okay? If you have to put it right now, what's the Melayne vision board for the next, let's say, 3 years?
3 years, okay. I mean, I definitely would love to create more experiences with the women, because in the past I've usually done 1 or 2 retreats. I would love to create more of those, because I feel like the work we're doing is very important, and I would like to reach more women, for sure. Travel more and offer more of those specific experiences. And what I've been doing also since last year more is shorter ones, maybe like a half day. Something where, you know, a woman, and I did one last year in Hamburg, which was 3 hours long, and to see how the women walked in and what we were able to create in 3 hours, to me was incredible, because it's like, wow, just in this short period of time you can already create a shift that they then carry with them and go home, and they create little changes. So in that aspect of my life, I definitely would like to spend more time offering that work and sharing that. For me personally, and that's something that we always talk about, Montana has kind of isolated us a little bit in terms of our own practice and our own development. So now that we have our van, I think that is creating a little bit more freedom as to come and spend 2 months, for example, here in Austin. Because every time I come here, I'm like, oh gosh, same as what I said about Montana with the summers, like, oh, I know. I'm like, oh, I know, I actually love jiu-jitsu. I want to train more. I want to learn more. So creating more of those times for my own training and my own growth. And I think this is really it, because Budokon naturally is ever evolving, just by its nature, by where we go, who we meet, what we are discovering in our own process of aging. You know, me, I'm about to turn 40. 30.
What?
Yeah.
That was like 29.
Yeah, I know it's 29, but it's 40. Forever 29. No, and you know, my body's changing, my hormones are changing. So even this is something that I always want to bring in to anything that I get to do and who I get to work with, because I have to. I mean, I'm my own experiment. So that's the only way I can even feel like share. So this is something where I feel like I have to push my body and constantly learn about my body and the newness and what's there to discover. So I can't get stagnant, and this is my challenge maybe with Montana, that sometimes it feels too stagnant, versus where I cannot have myself in relationship to, because there's nothing to relate to. So yeah, the van life is, I think, creating more opportunities for us to go out. And I think for Budokon, one big mission is really building the combat conditioning and the mobility program, and going to 6 Blades and Lovato schools and meeting everyone and sharing that work. And for me, it always will be a mission to bring the ladies to jiu-jitsu. And yeah, figuring out even where do we want to live maybe in 5 or 10 years. Is Montana the place, or as we're traveling, do we maybe figure out there's another place on this planet where we want to go? Do we want to simplify and maybe just live in a van? And you know, who knows? You know,
well, they might convince me too. You know, I'm looking at that thing. I was like, oh, maybe I should get one. You know, since I'm always on the road.
Yes.
You know, but also I see a brown belt. You know, a little darker color on that belt. You know,
I gotta switch my jumper to brown then.
Okay, she's keeping there. You know, it's beautiful because, like I said, I have always and I always say that in my interviews and everything, that when I started jiu-jitsu, one of the main things with Six Blades or everything I do in my life is creating a good experience where it's welcoming to everybody, right? It was very welcoming, but wasn't professional. Now we make it professional. And I remember starting jiu-jitsu, and of course you could do a whole episode to talk about that. It's like there was no girls. Every girl that would come in was like just fighters. It was rude. It wasn't welcoming. And some girls, of course, you go in, was a very like it's like little like a wilderness. You know, like you go in, a lot of uneducated men. You know, and I think it's. I have always thought like I would never put my sister in jiu-jitsu. You know, and now I'm like, let's go, girls, let's do this.
For
you know,
sure.
and I'm really, you know, of course, I have a big influence from my mom, my sister. You know, I have being father of a beautiful girl. For me, is my duty, and I'm very grateful that I have you in my life. That we can share a lot of moments. We've been on, you know, a lot of camps together now. It's amazing to have you as my sister, as my partner in this quest to bring more women to jiu-jitsu. You know, and hopefully I can teach you enough, or I can teach enough jiu-jitsu to women where they can feel more secure about themselves, so they can connect. You know, they can live their lives in a better way among themselves first. You know what I mean? Because I feel that there's always this idea of like you said in the beginning, oh, you're not gonna find a good man. I was like, well, why does it say that the idea of a woman value is the man she finds, right? I think the value of a woman is within herself.
100%.
You know, and I'm really glad that we're in this together. You know, and thank you for here and talking to us. I hope it has inspired not just the girls that are here in our channel, but the guys as well to really find that alignment. You know, in your relationships, your alignment in everything you do in your life. Me personally, I'm doing a lot of lining work in the last few days. You know, working on like what type of things, what type of people I want to be around, what type of things I want to do. You know, and I really appreciate you guys. I came here. We have a seminar tomorrow. You know, I'm very excited to keep doing this work. You know, I have always done mobility. I have always done all of this. I have always dreamed of it. You know, when you guys are part of my dream, and thank you for that.
Right. Thank you. I think we are all gifts in each other's lives, and somehow we found each other. And this is what I love about our relationship. It's so layered. You know, we can talk jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu goes so far beyond just the practice of jiu-jitsu, and then the spirituality and, you know, medicine work, and, you know, but I think the most important component I always really feel is this family aspect, the community, and sharing. I feel like we all are always curious. We're very open-minded, and I think this is something that you bring and we bring to people in our lives, like staying curious, and with that curiosity and the courage, being really willing to make changes, you know, take chances. Because I think in nowadays situation, oftentimes people just kind of stay behind, you know, they stay in their comfort zones, and I mean, obviously jiu-jitsu gets you out of it, like hard.
Forces you out of it, unless you can bite.
Yes, exactly, which, you know, which is even for us then back to the whole Budokon, it's the layers, it's not just one, you know, it's becomes your whole life. And so I'm grateful to have you in my life, for sure, you know, and what you bring into my life, and all the people we get to meet together, and lives we get to touch, and this mission. I love having a mission and being on a mission together.
All right, well, you know, we had that conversation there. There's a lot of missions.
Yeah, we're basically creating an empire with this emperor over here.
Well, my love, thank you so much.
Obrigada.
I love you. All right, next one we're going to do in Portuguese.
Oh yeah,
so,
vamos lá.
Stay tuned.
I
Ciao.
want in German maybe.